a former Republican spokesperson is going after Donald Trump in a and he did so in a scathing op-ed for the conservative news site The Bulwark. So this is really interesting. The op-ed was written by Tim Miller. So now Tim Miller, for those of you who are not, don't know who he is, which I didn't know who he was for until this article, but basically he served as the RNC's deputy communications director on Mitt Romney's 2012 run for president, and was later tapped as communications director on Jeb Bush's 2016 presidential campaign. So, of course,
please clap.
We have to play the obligatory please clap, just because, yeah. So he's got some beef with Donald Trump, which is pretty obvious. But then again, if you're somebody who generally believes in, I guess, quote unquote, conservative values, then you should also be against Donald Trump. So this is one of the anti-Trumpers who did not end up swearing fealty to Donald Trump, like your Ben Shapiro's and your Candace Owens and people like that. And so that's really interesting. So, and I say that because, again, this is an incredibly strong op-ed. So let me read some excerpts of it. And this is, again, is about Donald Trump's Nevada rally in Henderson. So he called this rally a, quote, truly shocking and unimaginably wheels-off undertaking, given that it came amid a pandemic that is still killing 1,000 Americans a day and with wildfires making much of the West Coast uninhabitable. So, I mean, already you have an admission that we have a pandemic that's killing thousands of people. Again, you're already miles ahead of the rest of the Republican Party. And admitting that that the wildfires are a problem, but of course not addressing climate change. And I don't know how this guy feels about climate change, but, we'll see. Maybe later on, he'll start saying things about climate change, which would be a positive step in my view. But then going back to the rally here, he said, quote, the president said that his opponent is a communist who would eliminate the suburbs and allow anarchists to burn down Hispanic businesses. He fabricated a charge about Democratic governor of Nevada tampering with ballots, declared that football is boring as hell, made fun of Chris Cuomo's ratings, joked about running for a third term, and said flag burners should go to jail for 1 year. So this is all the stuff, and to put it in context, he's framing this as the stuff that he found absolutely insane. He also shouted, quote, I love the Hispanics, lied about what was said at the DNC, reintroduced the bigoted dog whistle use, an exaggerated emphasis on the middle name of Barack Hussein Obama, which he had told Bob Woodward he only does in private, said that NASA was almost closed before he got into office and had grass growing on the runways, and then once again implied support for extrajudicial killings by U.S. Marshals. So that's a lot of the stuff that this guy has criticized for Donald Trump for saying. And I joined him in that criticism because all of that is just a heap of nuts, just craziness, absolute insanity. But again, it's what to expect from a Trump rally, of course. Now, what's interesting about that as well, and he's like, Obama being a communist, it's ridiculous. Oh my God, this is a Republican who's saying, of course Obama's not a communist. And of course, Joe Biden doesn't want anarchy and to burn down businesses and doesn't want the mob to burn. Yeah, of course, these are facts. These are objective facts. And it's just, I don't know, to hear a Republican, an ex-RNC spokesperson saying, well, obviously, duh, of course Obama's not a communist. It's kind of refreshing. It's kind of surprising to me. And so, but look, this is kind of like, this kind of gives me, John McCain vibes in a way, which I guess would make sense because this person, it did work for the establishment Republicans. Do you remember John McCain, for all the things that he did terribly and wrong and all the reasons that I have issues with John McCain, he once did call Obama a decent guy. Oh, okay. Now, look, I also have issues with Obama, but the right wing constantly makes things up about Obama, makes things up about, Democrats who are actually center right. They're a center right party. But not if you ask Republicans. Most Republicans, again, make up insane things. Look, if Obama was a quarter of socialist, as the right wing paints him, maybe we might have a public option right now, instead of maybe possibly kind of maybe a little bit campaigning on it, as Joe Biden is at this time. And so there's more though. So he doesn't just go after Donald Trump, which is pretty easy to do if you're a Republican, right? But also the Trump supporters. And I thought this was interesting. Quote, as Trump began a sidebar about Obama supposedly being caught spying on him, he eyed an attendee who was beginning a lock him up chant. He then egged on the overwhelmingly unmasked crowd into a frenzy in which they projected airborne spittle throughout the building in an attempt to will to life the fantasy that their wannabe strongman president might jail his predecessor, the first black president, for an imaginary crime. Now, he adds, this was not the only coronavirus projectile laden with racial invective emitted by the attendees. Following the removal of a protester, presumably a Black Lives Matter activist, although it wasn't clear from the video, the crowd began bellowing that oh-so-clever parlay, all lives matter, all lives matter. He then also said, it is easy for those who cover the politics of this to let that slip into a tit-for-tat between two political actors fighting over pandemic politics in an election year. The event was so much worse than that. Everything about it was fucking appalling. I gotta say, this is probably about the most honest I've ever seen a so-called Republican, right? I mean, it feels like I could have a conversation with this guy, which would be, probably fruitful and interesting, even if we would, disagree on policy positions. This guy seems to be sane. All right, more. On what he found so appalling, he said, it was so appalling that it would stand as the single most appalling and reckless political event hosted by any presidential nominee in my lifetime before yesterday by a long shot, if you just didn't count anything else Donald Trump did. Again, for an example, the Tulsa rally. You remember the Tulsa rally, right? That rally likely contributed to a spike in coronavirus cases. And it also might have, led to the death of Herman Cain, which I've talked about before. So, but anyway, Miller concluded, quote, all the president's grotesqueries matter. This is just the latest. So, look, that's pretty strong, right? That's a really strong, again, from a Republican, right? Now, here's what Miller misses, right? Donald Trump is a mirror for the Republican Party. And I've said this for quite some time, right? He reflects back what the conservative movement, what the voters want, right? And who they really are. And understand that's Donald Trump, right? He is a clown. He is an entertainer. He wants money and power, right? And so in order to attain that, and of course he wants affection as well, in order to get those things, he tells you what you want to hear, right? And he has found the Republican Party most receptive to that because they don't sense bullshit. They're easily duped, right? And of course, it's really easy to demagogue and scapegoat. And so, natural fit for the Republican Party, right? And also, Donald Trump's greedy as hell, so policy-wise, it makes sense to be in, with the party that loves to give billionaires or alleged billionaires, rich people, lots and lots of money. And so there's that, right? And so, again, Donald Trump has a natural fit within the Republican Party as he is a mirror of what they really, truly believe, right? He reflects back this, authoritarian, racist, xenophobic mindset. Again, their problem, the voters' problem, mainly comes from minorities. And that's what Trumpism is, really, when you break it down. It's racism, bigotry, and xenophobia. And it's all based on fear. Again, you have Republicans that openly spread the idea that Hispanic people are replacing white voters. It's the whole, great replacement theory that gets talked about in conservative circles. And so what Trump does is that he reaches deeply into the fears of white, affluent American males and say that you are the victim. These minorities, they're coming to get you. They're coming to your cities. They're going to break into your home. They're going to rape your wife. They're going to shoot your dog. They're going to rob you blind. And then they're going to take your money. They're going to take your job, your property, your religion, your freedom, and we're going to give it to those minorities, right? Now, all of that is completely made up and nonsensical. But it doesn't matter because they believe it. They believe it with every fiber of their being. And maybe if they don't believe it, they still have an irrational hatred of the other, of brown people. And that's what it is. And so it's far more than just disagreements about tax policy, right? It's not about that anymore. The Republican Party, conservatives, Trumpists, they live in a completely different world, right? Now, we live in the real world, okay, where there is nuance. They live in the topsy-turvy world where QAnon is real, Hillary eats children, Barack Obama is the deep state, but also a Muslim jihadi, and a LGBTQ Trojan horse for Marxism and pedophilia, and it just and on and on. And then there's this secret cabal of like evil extra-dimensional aliens that are going to shove you into hobbit homes and all this. Just complete absolute insanity, right? That world, by the way, did not materialize on its own. That worldview was pushed by conservative media. You've got Rush Limbaugh, you've got Alex Jones, you got that Klingerschmidt guy, Pat Robertson. Almost all of the right-wing media juggernaut was designed to lie and distract people. And of course, as the grift continued to go on over decades, you had to start coming up with even more insane theories and lies to try to get people to basically vote in favor of the candidates that are going to save you tax money, right? Again, if you have, these right-wing conservative billionaires, like the Koch brothers, don't want to pay taxes, right? Well, I mean, how are they going to continue to pick your pockets? If there's a unified front of workers, working class people, and middle class people, or if you divide the classes and you make them fight each other over ridiculous things and conspiracy theories. I think the answer is pretty obvious why Republicans lean so hard on these conspiracy theorists. And they've had to. They've had to rely on radicalism and on radicalizing their basically their voters into voting for their against their own economic self-interests, and a lot of these people unfortunately are really, really happy to be able to do that because they are afraid and they're conditioned to be racist. And a lot of it, party-wise, has to do with the coming demographic shift. America is getting more diverse, and there's a lot of people that are really, really afraid about, of that fact, and they're doing everything that they can to try to, to try to scare people, basically. And the billionaires, again, pick your pocket. Makes it easy when you're fighting each other. And so understand that the sooner actual conservatives realize this, the sooner I think they're going to realize a lot of their ideology, a lot of their other, messages are also wrong. So, look, I'm hoping Mr. Tim Miller, since this was a pretty strong op-ed, seems to be fairly smart, at least when it comes to identifying the problems with Trump voters. Who knows? Maybe this is somebody that, who sees these problems with the Republican Party is somebody that might come over maybe to the left. Or we could also have the other option, which is bad, basically trying to remake the Democratic Party into what the old Republican Party used to be before QAnon and racism took over. So, we'll have to see what happens. But it would be pretty interesting to have a discussion with him and see where he's coming from.